All right, believe it or not, we are actually getting close to the end of our Click the Clown game. We need still to make the game react to the countdown timer reaching 0, and we want to show a message when the game is over to the player. So for this final piece, I want to do a bit of cleanup first. If you look at our game controller and you go to the draw event, you'll see that inside our draw event, we're doing a bit of messing around with setting a local variable, and we're doing some calculations and things. To the extent possible, we want to use this draw event just to draw stuff. So I want to clean things up a little bit to focus our drawing just on drawing. So to do that, I'm going to go into the create event for our game controller, and I want to add a couple of things. First of all, we're making use of seconds. Remember, we created a variable called seconds, and we don't explicitly initialize it, which would be good practice to do. So I'm going to say seconds equals 0 in our controller. So here we're initializing a whole collection of variables, right? And let's see. In our draw event, why don't we then get rid of this? Okay, so we don't do the calculation here anymore. So we'll get rid of that. And instead, what I'll do is just say string game time minus seconds. So we'll make use of these variables that we have initialized elsewhere and are calculating in some other location, and then all we're doing here in the draw event is just drawing them out. Now that we have our draw event cleaned up, so it's just drawing, we're going to do one more thing with it. We have now made use of the idea of game states. We have our regular plain game state, which we've set to 0, and then we've said that if the counter reaches 0, then we're going to set the game state to -1, which we're going to conceptualize as being game over. And we're also setting an alarm at that point, which I'll come back to here in a little bit. But let's focus first on having what we draw on the screen be different depending on which state that we're in. So we're going to modify this draw statement in order to do that. Right? So to make all that happen, we're going to make use of an if statement. This is actually a bit of an easier kind of if statement than the one we already had. Here we just want to check which state we're in. So we're going to say if game state equals 0, meaning we're in our regular old main game state, then we're going to draw a certain set of stuff, which is all of the stuff we've been drawing all along here. So I'll just cut that out of there and paste it into here. So if we're playing the game as usual, then we'll draw the score and show how much time is remaining. However, if we are not in game state 0, and there's only one other option, which is to be in game state -1, so we don't have to explicitly say that, then we're going to draw some different stuff. So I'm going to copy all of these things again, and we'll paste them in here. And what I've put is this else statement. Before we just were working with the if. We said if one thing is true and another thing is true, then do something. But now we've added the alternative case. If it's not true, this thing we're checking here, then do this other set of stuff. Right? We'll keep our set color the same color, and we're going to show some text to let the player know that the game is finished. Right? The counter has reached 0, game's done, and we need to let them know that. So first thing I'd like to do is we're going to move the position of the text that we draw on the screen so that it's out in the center of the screen, and so that the line of text itself is also centered. And so we can center our text by using yet another one of our zillion draw built-in functions. And this is one that's going to be designed to align the text either left, right, or center. Okay, so it's draw set horizontal align is what that means. FA center means just center it. Okay. Then we need to draw some text, and what we're going to say for the text is relatively simple compared to what we did before. We're just going to have a string that says game over. But we don't want it positioned at 100, 100. We want it positioned out in the middle of the room. To make that happen, we can make use of the built-in variable called room width. And we'll divide that by 2. And when we do that, it's going to give us an x-coordinate, which is exactly in the center of the room. Similarly, we can use room height. Another built-in variable, divide that by 2, and then our y-coordinate will also be centered in the middle of the room. So we're saying draw this text centered right in the middle of the room. Regardless of what the room width and height are, this will work, right? We're just taking the width divided by 2, the height divided by 2 to plop us right in the middle. So let's steal this line of code because it's very useful if we want to draw something else. And we're going to say, all right, we're going to make the same position, but now we want to lower. We want to have it a little bit lower than the center of the room, so it's not being drawn directly over the other things. We'll say plus 20, which will take us 20 pixels down screen from the center of the screen. And we'll say final score plus string score. All right, so we're going to show the final score. In fact, I might want to put a colon and a space in there. So, all right, so what the heck does that look like? Well, to demonstrate without having to wait a minute, I'm going to set our game time temporarily to 10 seconds. Here you see one of the values of using these variables rather than just putting in some magic number here inside the script. If I set a variable, an instance variable in a controller in a create event, and then I want to change it, I only have to make the change in one location. And then anywhere where it refers to that in other scripts will be automatically updated. We've got 10, 9, 8, 7. Let's get some points while we're at it. Okay, reaches 0 and it says game over and it shows our final score. But you'll see, even though it says game over and we switched into the end of game state, the game doesn't actually finish, right? I can continue to click on our guy and get points. So the last thing we need to do for this Click the Clown game is to make it so the game actually finishes. And that's where our alarm comes in. So let's turn and talk about that. So I'm setting an alarm. And what is an alarm? Alarm is something that you use as a kind of timer. You can set an alarm. In fact, you can set multiple alarms. That's why we've got the 0 in here. You can have alarm 1, alarm 2, alarm 3. And in fact, what we're seeing here, this is information for a little later, is an array. It's a one-dimensional array. It's an array with one slot that can be filled with different things. So we're going to set a timer, an alarm, and the length of time we're going to set it for is whatever the room speed is times 10. Well, okay, that seems confusing. Essentially what that means is it's going to set an alarm for 10 seconds. It's a way of setting a timer for 10 seconds. Okay. Now what happens is we set an alarm and immediately it will start counting down from whatever we set it to. So it's going to, in the background, be going 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, etc. And when that alarm reaches 0, it's going to fire off an alarm event. And we can track that and perform some action when this alarm reaches 0. And the way we can do that is by adding an event that is an alarm event. And in fact, alarm 0, we can see it goes up to 11 here. So what we want to do is after we hit 10 seconds, we want to do something. And what do we want to do? We want to end the game. And fortunately, there is a built-in function called game end that will end the game. I actually think 10 seconds is too long. I'm following along with our PowerPoint. I'm going to change this and say 5 seconds. So let's give this a try. In fact, I'm going to go back to our create for testing this, and I'm going to set our game time way down to only 5 seconds. And let's see what this looks like. Game starts, counts down from 5, reaches 0, shows the final score for 5 seconds, and then after 5 seconds, the game will end. That's it. There is still one little problem. As I mentioned, even though we go into the end of game state and we see the final score, we're still seeing the clown, and in fact the clown is still clickable. We really don't want the player to be able to keep clicking on the clown when they're viewing that game state, so we want to get rid of it. There are a zillion different ways to make that happen, but I'll show you one way to do it. We're going to have the clown keep track of what state the game is in. And if the clown notices that the game has switched from regular gameplay state into end state, we're going to have the clown destroy itself. Okay? So even there are different ways to do it, but I want to show you an example of a way that uses a step event. So we're going to our clown object, into our step, and we'll use end step. And I actually think just step will work, but I want to show you these different types. All right, so I'm going to say end state, step, end step. The idea is that every step of your game, these step events get fired, and the end step is one that gets fired essentially after the other step events. And the idea is that with an end step, it is triggered when all of the values of variables and the positions of objects and things have all been updated for a given step in your game. Then the last thing that happens is that this end step event gets fired off. So let's throw in another if statement to check which state we're in. Now, if I were just to say game state, if game state equals -1, and do something here, this won't work. And in fact, it's not giving us an error, but it wouldn't actually work. And do you know why it wouldn't work? The reason it wouldn't work is that game state is an instance variable that we set up over here on the controller. Right here it is, game state. So if we're sitting on the clown and we say, hey, check what game state is, it doesn't have any idea what game state is. It's never heard of this thing because it lives on a different object. If we want to seek out and check the value of an instance variable that lives on a different object, we have to use this dot syntax to find it. So which object does it live on? It lives on obj underscore game underscore controller dot game state. And by doing this, we can actually find it. And what do we want to have happen? If game state is equal to number 1, we want to destroy the instance of the clown, and we can do that by calling this built-in function instance destroy. This instance destroy function is great. If I don't include any parameters here or any arguments, it will just destroy whatever it's hooked to. But I could actually pass it information if I wanted to destroy some other objects. It would work that way too. Right? Let's check it with our quick version of the game. Here's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, score 0, and look, our clown disappeared. And after a few seconds, the game exits. Hooray. And at long last, with all of that set in place, you have all the information you need to do your first assignment, which is to create a game like the clown clicking game called the Fruit Clicker game. And the information for what you need to do for that assignment is on the Blackboard site. You're going to take the functionality and all the new things you learned about GameMaker here to create a related but different kind of game. So have fun with that and good luck.